Hi everyone, welcome to our event. This event is brought to you by DataTalks.Club, which is a community of people who love data. We have regular events, and if you want to find out about the events we have, there is a link in the description. Click on that, and you'll see all the events we have in our pipeline. Then, very important, do not forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. This way you'll get notifications about all future streams like the one we have today. And we have a great Slack community. You can join it if you want to hang out with other data enthusiasts. During today's interview, you can ask any question you want. There is a link in the description. Click on that link, ask your questions, and we will be covering these questions during the interview. Okay, this is the intro. And now I am opening the questions that Johanna prepared. And if you're ready, we can start.
Yes, absolutely.
Then we start. This week we'll talk about Anastasia's career. So we will talk about her transition from working as a physicist at Large Hadron Collider to working with LLMs. And so we have a very special guest today, Anastasia. She is a particle physicist who turned data scientist. She has experience of running experiments at this Large Hadron Collider and later at Blue Yonder, where she scaled AI solutions for global supply chains. She also led NLP and search efforts at Kaufland, which is a very big e-commerce chain in Germany. And she's also a machine learning AI mentor. She's passionate about developing the next generation of data science talent in Germany. So welcome to our show.
Thank you, Alexei, and thank you for your team for preparing this podcast today. I'm really honored to be here. And I think I follow your podcast for quite some years. I even can say since then. But it was always a pleasure for me to watch your discussion with guests. I'm happy to be one of them today.
Thank you finally, yes, long overdue. And of course, I want to join you in thanking Johanna for preparing the questions for today's interview. So thanks, Johanna, for help. So let's start with your background. So maybe we will talk about your experience in more details, what you did, but maybe you just can briefly outline. I think I already did that in the intro, but maybe you can just briefly give us like a short outline of your career so far.
Yes, yeah. I mean, you already mentioned like the major step, let's say, in my way so far. I usually describe myself as a mover. So I moved many times in my life, in my career as well. So like, first of all, I moved from Russia to Germany. Within Germany, I also already moved a couple of times. And professionally, I was also like, even within my research career, I actually switched between 3 experiments from my, let's say, research life. So Large Hadron Collider was the largest one and the last stop, so to speak. But before I also worked in multiple experiments before. And when I decided to transition to the industry, and where I also was fortunate enough, let's say, to experience also various industry and also apply my knowledge, I think it helped me a lot. Let's say with experience, I started to collect being in the research by going from, let's say, one step to another, but also I scaled this, so to speak, when I moved to the industry. And this is where I realized my strength is, and this is how I know I can help other people who may be not so, let's say, brave to start this transition, but I'll probably really want this to do. As a mentor, I help a lot of people to do kind of, or be, let's say, more certain about the movement we would like to do next.
Which part of Russia?
Short, yes.
Which part of Russia are you from?
I'm from Siberia, so from Novokuznetsk.
Where?
Novokuznetsk.
Okay, my knowledge of Siberia, I don't know where it is. I'm from Far East, so we're kind of both Asian, I guess.
From which city are you from?
It's near Khabarovsk.
Near Khabarovsk. Okay. Yeah, I unfortunately, like, when I was living there, I had the chance, you like, when you live there, you always try to go west, right? So it sounds like St. Petersburg and Moscow, all these cool cities are there. So I always wanted to go like more east, but unfortunately it didn't happen. And right now it's a bit difficult to travel.
So you moved instead of moving east, you moved west and ended up in Germany, right?
Yes, yeah. I mean, like many people with whom I studied, they moved to this, big city like Moscow and St. Petersburg are usual suspects. And I decided to go like far much power, so to speak, and moved directly to Germany. So I never lived I lived in the big city in Russia, so in Novosibirsk. I studied there. And this is usually the city I tell people, especially if they never have been in Russia, because this is the closest, largest city, and it's quite famous, especially in research, because we have a very nice research center.
Yeah, and the university is quite well known. And where in Germany are you in right now?
Right now I'm based in Hamburg. I really love Hamburg. It's like, I think it was love from the first sight, so to speak. So
yeah, it's amazing city. I was there as a tourist like for 3 days, but like it's amazing. It's so different from Berlin though.
It
Like
is. There are some, we call, we have couple of places. We call them, they look like Berlin because you really.
Yeah, there is one. There is one. I think I've been there. Like the buildings look similar. Like there's a lot of graffiti and junkies and.
Right. Yes. No, I love Berlin as well. I think it's my second favorite city in Germany, after Hamburg, obviously.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So we took a look at your profile. So Johanna did a great job doing that, and you have like great, it's extensive intro. And like there is a lot of things there. And you said, okay, I don't think I should read this, but so you maybe let's start with this Hadron Collider. So you like I'm just trying not to read this, but like there is no way I think I can avoid. So I see that like you took part in very large experiments with like a lot of people working on this experiment. So maybe you can tell us more about that. Like, what did you do there, and why these experiments needed so many people? And also, I was always wondering, like, what actually Large Hadron Collider does. Like,
nice. Okay. Now we have a danger to turn this into, so the kind of a popular science podcast.
Like I remember, so when the Large Hadron Collider was just becoming a thing, and people just like when it was built, people were afraid that somehow there would be a black hole.
Yes, it will create a black hole. It will absorb our universe, and we all.
Yeah.
Yes. Nice theory. Yeah. Maybe.
Why are we still alive?
This is a good question. We're asking ourselves every day. I mean, maybe I can first start with what particle physics is, right? So because usually when people say I'm coming from research, right, the typical picture that you are someone who was wearing a white coat and sitting in the lab and doing something with, glasses and putting some funny things, right? So this image comes from chemistry and from medicine. And in physics, it's so not true. Like I was never wearing white coat when I was working there, for example. Right? I was wearing some coats because I was working in the lab, but it was never white. And when in particle physics, it's essentially about exploring the universe, so to speak, right? And how we do this, it's sorry, it's very similar to what you do as a child, right? So as a child, if you would like to study something, you usually try to bring this apart, right? So you break this apart and see what is inside. This is essentially what this grown-up physicists are doing there. So we try to kind of break things, right? And these things are usually like particle, we know, like proton, neutron. You might recall this from your, let's say, lessons in school.
No,
like,
I don't.
but there are like atoms, and then atom consists from some stuff, right? So essentially, we kind of take the stuff and they accelerate this, because this is how this thing gains a lot of energy, and when we collide this thing, right? So this is what collide is for. So essentially, we have two, we call it beams, or two chunk of particles which collide together and create new particles or create something, right? And essentially,
these particles are so tiny. Like, how can you, when they, like, how do you make sure they even collide?
Oh, now I see. Yes. I mean, to keep answer short, essentially, you use the electromagnetic laws, right? So you essentially kind of focus with particles, because you have a lot of magnets on the way, and these magnets help you to focus with. And this is like the strongest magnets we have on the planet, I believe. So this is to answer your first question. And second thing, what I wanted to say in this, what I was doing essentially looking what will happen after we collide with beams, right? So with the particles. And to do this, you essentially need a lot of cameras, right? So all these huge things. So usually when you see with big pictures from the LHC, you see picture of a detector. So this is like a big camera. It's not quite similar to what you have in your mobile phone, but it has similar principles. So it's using some physical principles to detect what is happening inside and register this, right? But here you essentially take a lot of pictures and you analyze those pictures. And in the past, people did this exactly like this. So you really have like pictures and you look at them manually, right? So as you can imagine, this is not really scalable. And now everything is done like semi-automatically at least, right? So you take all this data, you store this, and then you analyze this data later. And in terms of a scale, it's a lot of data. I mean, there are like billions of such events happen within, I would say, within a minute, right? So many of them are not so
There are many
interesting.
particles that collide, or
Yes.
like
So
quite.
you really kind of try to push. Well, I don't remember exact numbers to be honest, but you really collect a lot of data within a second, right? So, and then obviously you need some algorithms and some methods to analyze this data, and this is why particle physics was always like a front or H field where you try to apply this data analysis and always, statistical analysis of data and all things we're now using to analyze, for example, e-commerce data, right? They were used in particle physics already for quite some time because you face exactly the same problem that you have a lot of data, which we call events, and you need to understand this. This is why particle physics is, I would say, very close to the data science and maybe much closer to the data science than some other fields. But to be honest, when I was moving to industry, I actually had a hard time to explain this to the people because most of the people think you were sitting in the lab and doing something with, funny liquids, which is so not true for the particle physics.
Fine liquids. Yeah, okay. So like you said, there are cameras, and then like there are particles that collide, and there are billions of events, and most of these events are not interesting. So you need to find first, out of all these events, you need to find the interesting ones, and then do some analysis on top of that, right?
Yes, yeah, yeah,
And
right. So
why?
essentially, you analyze this, yeah.
Yeah, please.
No, you wanted to ask something, so
Yeah, so like I was wondering, why do you need so many people? Like, and how do you even like? I cannot imagine. Like, for example, if I think about like a typical company, so for example, a company where I worked before, it had like, I don't know, a couple of thousand people, and then a couple of hundred in the IT department, and only like maybe 20, 30 data scientists who did the data science stuff. But like if we talk about these large scale experiments with, as mentioned, like 500 or 2.5 thousand people, like how do you, like, is it that much work? And like, how do you even distribute this work across all these people? And what kind of work do they do?
I'm pretty sure if they would have more resources, they would hire more people because you always have a lot of work and all people kind of working a lot there, right? To answer your question, there are like not all people who are working there are data scientists or close to the data scientist, to be honest, right? So as you can imagine, this very unique thing also needs very unique maintenance, right? And there is a big team who is just working on hardware, so to speak, right? Because all the things you are building there, they usually don't exist somewhere else, right? So you need the expertise.
Makes sense. Yeah.
We have very special conditions. You always work on the improvement with things. This is kind of I mean, there is a lot of radiation, so to speak, right? So you need to exchange with detectors which are inside and so on, which are exposed to this huge radiation dose and so on. So it's like it's never. I mean, it's. I guess it's very different compared, let's say, experiments in the space where you build the detector and you send this. So here on Earth, you try to use this advantage that you can replace things, and you always have a lot of people working or thinking about the next steps, right? So this is a huge part of his team. Another part of his team is working on maintenance and like operations and so on. And then it's kind of split between people who are doing analysis. So as analytists, you can have fun, and it's similar to Cinderella story, right? So you can't have fun till you're done with housework. So you also have some, we call it like service work, which you have to do to make this detector operational or keep it operational and so on, right? And then you have a lot of system, right? So what I describe like a huge camera, in reality, it's several systems stuck together. They all have different principles. They all have to be aligned and so on. So it's like, it's a lot of work, right? So therefore, I would say like few thousand people who are working there, they're totally justified. And then it's also about, let's say, many people who are learning something there, right? So I went to LHC after I was done with my PhD, but many people actually write in the physics, starting from master. You can even write a bachelor physics and so on. And of course, you need some kind of supervisors, and it's kind of, so you have it's like training machine as well. So it's not only to do the research, but also train, let's say, next generation of scientists. Yeah.
That makes sense. So there is a lot of, as you said, hardware. And I guess like if I compare this with what I said before about my previous company, I said that there are a couple of thousand people, but most of them work in operations. So I think it also applies here, right? So you need hardware, you need to maintain this hardware, right? So a lot of people work on that. And also there are other people who do analytics, right? So maybe not all of these 2.5K people
You actually
are the
rather
data
rare have
scientists.
people who, sorry, it's a bit interrupting on my side. Sorry for
Fine.
interrupting you. I mean, you usually never do just data analytics there,
Hmm.
right? Where you usually have both, right? So part of your work is analyzing the data, and part of your work might be like working on the next generation of a detector, right? Working on detector maintenance and so on. So you really try to kind of, and most of the physicists were involved in both parts, right? So you also have like theoreticians who are officially not part of a collaboration, but people who are thinking about all these theories. And regarding the data analytics per se, let's say, or data analysis people are doing, there are also many various ways how you can look at the same data, right? So because there are many theories out there trying to explain what we don't understand yet. And you need like a dedicated team who will look at this, understand the theory, and also understand the detector and so on. So yeah.
Okay. So why there was this idea that somehow this Large Hadron Collider can create a black hole and destroy the universe?
I think it was like misunderstanding. I think there is a theory that it does create a black holes, but they're really tiny ones, and they disappear almost immediately, so you can't really see them, right? So the reason why we built this thing is on one hand looking for the Higgs, and you must probably have heard
Mhm,
about Higgs boson, which was a big thing, which was discovered like 10 years ago and so on.
mhm,
But the second reason that there is some, let's say, material we don't understand, which is called dark matter and dark
mhm,
energy. And it's called dark because no one knows what is this exactly. We have some kind
mhm,
of, from our friends from cosmology, we have some
mhm,
confirmation it exists, but we don't really know what is this. And we were hoping that if we will have like enough energy to create the particles which maybe substitute this material, we can understand this here on Earth. So far, it did not happen, unfortunately, but we keep trying, all right? And I believe if anything can help us when experiment like this is, of course, is very, very nice, let's say, laboratory to produce this. But this is where it becomes very difficult because to scale this even more, you will need even more people, even more resources. It will be even more expensive. And there's like a huge debate right now whenever or not you want to do this. Yeah.
mhm,
To be fair, this is not the only collider on the Earth, right? So
mhm,
there are other colliders which exist. For example, I know in Germany right now we're constructing a new thing. So if you happen to be near Darmstadt, you can
mhm,
actually visit the construction site where we also built, well, it's not really collider, but it's also experiment where
mhm,
we accelerate the particles and
mhm,
investigate them and so on. And you also have like, I think like 500 people or so working there. Yeah.
mhm. Yeah, I think a year ago I went to a planetarium here in Germany, and the session was about dark matter. And actually, it was in German, so like I understood it only like maybe 70%.
Mhm.
But at the end, they were also talking about Hadron Colliders, different ones, and they were
Mhm.
showing like on the map where they are. And I was wondering like how did they jump from dark matter to Hadron Colliders? And now it kind of makes sense.
Yes, yes, yes. You essentially can, I mean, like you build the theory to explain what is this, and then you try to prove this theory with like the experiments in the lab, and this is like control experiments. Well,
Mhm.
to some degree, right? So it's not fully controlled, but it's kind of your the best controlled way you can think of right now.
And one of the things you mentioned is that particle physics is much closer to data science
Mhm.
than people imagine typically. But you also had problem with explaining this because the image of scientists that people have is like this, liquids and stuff. So how did you actually do this? How did you convince people that, okay, we actually did data science, we actually followed the best software engineering practices, and these software engineering practices have helped us, avoid creating mess and destroy the universe. Like, how did you explain that?
Right. I guess it took me some time to actually understand I need to explain this, and this is this perception when you're coming from some field, you don't understand that no one else knows how it works, right? So because you're surrounded by people who know this, and you kind of rather rare have to explain what you are doing, right? So like really doing like to this extent, right? So because like most of the time when I had the discussion about my work, it was like with what we had right now, right? So what you're doing, why do you need so many people and so on. So and when you go to the job market, you actually have to change your story and when you need to understand with whom you are talking. And I think this was the hardest part because without being in the industry, it was not clear to me what we are looking for and how I can relate, let's say, my story to what we
Mhm.
are looking for. So this was the lesson I had to learn, let's say, in a hard way. And always think about the software development, right? So what you mentioned. So essentially, to operate with huge thing, you obviously have a lot of software, right? And I
Mhm.
was lucky enough, let's say, to be exposed to the best software practices rather early because was the only way you can control that many thousands of people working on the same thing. I mean, it was not like a monolith
Mhm.
for all of them, but there are some monolith-like things as well. Like there is a software which you operate to take the data, right, to store this recording and to process the data. And this is obviously one piece, big piece of software for the entire detector and so on. Again, back when it was not clear to me that this is how you do this in industry as well, right? So with GitHub, version control, CI/CD, and things like that. And I was also fortunate enough with people who were thinking in these terms in the experiments I was working in. But it took me some time, and I think only when I actually moved to the industry, I understood, okay, what were the things which were actually were my selling points, so to speak, from the science. And this is what I try to help with right now as a mentor, especially for the people who would like to transition from academia to industry, because this is usually the thing you struggle the most. Yeah. But it took me some time to realize this.
So you had all this, you mentioned GitHub, CI/CD, right? So you
Mhm.
already knew all that.
Yes, yeah. Well, I
Mhm.
mean, I maybe did not know the words, the name for this, right? I
Right.
mean, the version control, right? So, and
Mhm.
everyone explains to you why version control is important. And I also
Mhm.
so old that I still remember, the thing before GitHub.
With SVN
So
or?
yes, 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 man.
Okay.
So it was, and I remember we had in this experiment I mentioned before in Darmstadt. This is actually where I did my PhD. I remember we had a huge debate whenever or not we want to move to the Git.
Mhm.
Because it was back when it was not clear if it will be the thing,
Mhm.
right? So, and it was just another version control
Mhm.
system, so people were quite against it.
Mhm.
Anyway, yes, so like CI/CD, I mean, like I saw how it is implemented, and it was actually implemented during my last years, let's say in LHC. I think I did not know the term for this back then, but I understood the advantage,
Mhm.
and I was quite happy, let's say, to
Mhm.
to have this thing because it saved a lot of headache for us as
Mhm.
well.
Because you probably knew this thing as, okay, you push and something happens, right? But you didn't know the name.
Yes, and when you have a lot of things which is going on and it suddenly sends, I think for me, the first time when I saw it, it was like a magic, right? So like you suddenly get email which tells you what did you do wrong, right? So this was like,
Like failed tests, right? Or something like that.
yes, like failed test with explanation and so on. So it was,
Uh-huh.
yeah, it was really
That's
cool.
cool. So you already knew these things. And I imagine also like probably terminology that you use in physics is different from the terminology you use in data science, and you somehow needed to learn this language of data scientists, right? To in order to
Absolutely.
put it
Yes,
out.
yes, with translation, let's say, to the normal language, right? So because you use a lot of jargon, obviously, there are some things like with, let's say, machine learning. In the beginning, I mean, in physics, it was used for many years, let's say, the concepts were used in machine learning. But the whole field was called like multivariate analysis or something like this, because you analyze the data from many dimensions at the same time. And obviously, when I mentioned I was working in multivariate analysis since my master time, no one understood what I was referring to, right? So, yeah. So, like the language, you also have to adjust.
Right. And like I imagine that you come to an interview and you explain how cool this thing is, like how dark matter, like boson Higgs and Higgs boson, and like colliding things, and then okay, this is cool, but like, what does it have to do with our stuff, right?
Right. No, absolutely. I think I failed like a couple of interviews. I mean, first of all, I didn't realize how serious is this, and it's not just conversation, right? But it's conversation about some particular job in some particular company, and we're looking for some particular experience, right? Which you have to kind of show. I think I was lucky. Like, I mean, back when LHC was a bit more famous than right now. And also there was the situation on the market was completely different, right? So right now you have like many candidates and very few jobs. Back
Mm-hmm.
when you had a lot of like people in Germany realized that data science is the thing. They
Hmm.
tried to hire people for this, right? And they did not know exactly themselves what they're looking for. And many jobs I interviewed back then was really I would be the first data scientist starting there, and we were just wondering if I will be able to do what they think data science can do for them without knowing much
Hmm.
about data science themselves. So
Okay.
I think I'm pretty happy right now. It did not end up in the place like this, because I think I would fail and it will be hard for me to recover. But back then I was very advantageous and just wanted to
Hmm.
move to the industry and was going to
Hmm.
every interview where I would be invited.
So did I understand correctly that you had offers to companies to join as the only data scientist, but you decided not to, right?
No, I did not have offers. I was invited to the interview,
Invited.
but in conversation, they realized I don't have capabilities, let's
Ah,
say,
I see, I
knowledge
see.
how to do this, and
Hmm.
therefore I was never selected.
Hmm.
Good for me, I would say. Yeah, of course,
Because I
that
imagine
was
it
a
would
bit
be quite
disappointing.
difficult.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And then you joined, was it Blue Yonder or
Yes, it was a
is it a
blue.
consultancy company or what do they do?
Bluyante is a vendor for software vendor for supply chain.
Uh-huh.
And it's quite big. So, I mean, it's quite interesting company. So it started as a startup in Germany, built by the professor of physics. So it
Hmm.
still has many physicists, not
Uh-huh.
only physicists anymore, but still has. And I think this is why they understood what I was doing, because they were also physicists themselves.
Hmm.
And therefore, and I mean, I already learned a bit about the translation, so I think we saw that I have enough business understanding, so to speak. But we also understood things which I was not able to translate back then, right? Uh,
Hmm.
yeah, actually, before I joined, this company was bought by the big US company, like really a big software vendor. And when this company was so much impressed by the stuff this German startup was doing, that they decided to rename themselves after the small startup, right? And so now the entire company is called Blue Yonder, which initially started as this German company, right? And this was a really great place, I must say. So, I mean, right now, after I know everything in my, well, what happened afterwards, I would say I was really lucky to end up in the place like this.
You're still there, right?
No, no, I'm not
No.
there since
Hmm.
more than a year. Yeah.
Uh-huh. What do you do now?
Right now, I'm mainly mentoring, I would say. Yes.
Ah, That's cool. Okay, well, tell us about this. So how do you, and maybe like first, because I see that there is a related question, and maybe you can also tell us about your mentoring story, but answer this question because I think this question is related to what you help with. So the question is, how can we convince German companies in this field? I have many job interviews, and like it's a long question. Like maybe let me try to see how I can. Like I skip the first and second interviews. Probably I think skip first and second, maybe pass first and second, and then get rejected. The worst thing about German companies is that they don't get feedback when I get rejected. If they have experience on this subject, I'd like to hear it. So somebody anonymous has a problem that it's hard to convince German companies. They have many job interviews. They pass, they manage to clear some steps, but then get rejected and get no feedback. And yeah, so what should they do?
This is a very good question. I mean, in general, in Germany and in Europe, people are usually very careful with giving you feedback because they're afraid that you will sue them for this, right? Which is not so typical. I would say it's more like US thing to go to the court if you're not happy about something. But still, they're very happy, or let's say unhappy to give you feedback. Even if there are some certain things, the best thing you can do if you manage to build a good relationship with hiring person, right? So it might be HR or maybe hiring manager. You maybe ask them for the call and kind of frankly ask what you can do better, right? So for the short call, like 15 minutes or so. And if you went to, let's say, to several stages, usually they might be, let's say, able to help you and tell you what was not right, let's say in this case, right? So quite often it also has nothing to do with a candidate, but it's more like that they have someone they feel would fit better, right? So and it's like nothing you can do, right? So if they don't see you as a part of a team, it's not necessarily something related to you, but more like their picture of whom they imagine to do, right? So therefore, the only advice I can give here, maybe reach out to the person with whom you were talking first and ask them if they can have some time for, and talk with you, but don't expect too much. They might be also very vague. There might be also some other reason, like they decided to promote someone internally and again, like stop the entire process and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, like for the feedback, it's really quite typical that you get just a rejection with something, a very standard phrase, and that's it.
Yeah. So I remember from my experience working at multiple companies, some of them were German. Sometimes when you don't get feedback, when the companies don't give feedback, it could be cultural fit or misfit, right? And then like, because this is a very good ground for actually, like, as you said, potentially suing, right? Because like you don't feel like this person would fit the team, but you cannot say this,
Yes,
right?
yeah,
So
right.
you would be on the safe side and not say anything, saying, hey, like, sorry, but like it doesn't work out, rather than say, hey, we think like, and then give actual reasons, because like cultural fit and so on. So it's often behavioral questions. So I don't know if these rounds that you mentioned have this, but could be it too. So this is what I saw. Even in one-on-one conversations, HR are hesitant to talk about this.
Yes,
When
yeah,
it's
I mean,
like,
if it's clear non-fit from cultural perspective, and
yeah,
of course it's very dangerous topic. They will never phrase it like this, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
they usually will try to go to the hard skills, right, and tell you,
Yeah,
you
because
know,
this is like you didn't pass this coding challenge, so like it's kind of it's as objective as it gets, right?
right, right, yes. It also helps sometimes maybe to discuss your experience with someone else. I mean, who have not been at the interview, but just tell them how it went. And this is what I do with my mentors a lot. We usually do like a feedback sessions, even if I have not been in the interview. If someone will explain me how did it go, and how they behave and what did they tell to this question. Sometimes you actually can feel the question which went wrong, right? So even if your answer was okay, you can kind of be very hesitant. And when we do kind of this feedback session where we discuss this and see, okay, what the person might do differently next time, and usually it helps a lot, right? So not only, let's say, mock session for the preparation where you do kind of a rehearsal, but also like post more, so to speak, right afterwards. It's like talking with someone who has experience in the field and can tell you whenever it is acceptable or not. And referring to my kind of moving or transition experience, I mean, quite often you just don't understand that things are working differently, right? Somewhere, like it might be different country, it might be different field, right? So it might be different company simply, right? So having someone who is much closer to this, even if they're not working in this company, might be very helpful. Yeah. And to what you mentioned, behavioral part, I would say many people underestimate this, and it's usually the most important part in the interview, right? So it's not like, did you solve the coding challenge or not? But it's quite often about how you behave, how you present yourself, how you discuss some particular situation. And if you are not prepared for this part, and many people overlook this, most probably you won't pass this.
And this is especially true for people that come from Eastern Europe, because I think, like for example, in Russia, we put more emphasis on the hard skills, and we underestimate the importance of soft skills. It was for me the case that I think, okay, like if I know Java well, then for sure this company will hire me, right? And then they all of a sudden start asking things like, hey, tell us about the time when you helped your colleague, and I'm like, what?
Right. No, it's true. I mean, I would not say it's related to Eastern Europe per se. I mean, I'm working with people all around the globe, and I see.
But
I
what I
think it's
meant to
also
say
related to the
is,
kind of
yeah,
experience you had so far.
hmm
Yes.
yeah, because like in university, we focus on like solving math problems, solving like programming problems. At least that was my experience studying computer science, that we just focus too much on um, hard skills, but overlook like teamwork and things like that, at least in university.
Absolutely, absolutely. But I guess it's not better in German universities, to be honest.
Maybe.
Um, Still, I believe it's more related to the experience, right? So if you, let's say, if you're in the beginning of your career, usually you don't recognize importance of
Yeah,
the
right.
soft skills, and this is what many people say, and I can be one of them, right? So the soft skills, the most important skills to move, excuse me, to move forward, right? Because not how good you are in Java or in Python, whatever, does not really matter if you can't really collaborate with other teams and sort out everything's which might pop up, right, and so on. Yeah.
hmm And what do you suggest? Like, how can we prepare for this, for the interview?
First of all, be aware that behavioral part of interview is very important part, so don't underestimate this. I mean, behavioral part requires some special kind of preparation, right? So compared to the hard skills, what usually helps us kind of have a look at the typical questions, right? So there are many lists out there. You can simply Google or just ask ChatGPT to prepare
hmm
some questions for you and practice them, and prepare some stories you can tell, right? So it
hmm
might be one story. I mean, you don't have to be very creative and create the stories for every single questions
hmm
you will find in the internet. It might be just one story you use several times to highlight various things, right?
hmm
But if you do it at least once, and this is what I like about behavioral interviews, compared to the hard skills, which you always have to keep fresh. For behavioral, you need to do this once and maybe refresh this sometimes by just like checking your notes for the stories you prepared.
hmm
And that's it, right?
hmm
And maybe also think before you go to the interview what type of the soft skills they would be the most interested in.
hmm
So is it
hmm
like teamwork? Is it being proactive? Is it being supportive, right? And so on.
hmm So what I found helpful for me personally was interview questions for Amazon. So Amazon have they call it leadership principles,
Yes. Yeah.
and they check if somebody is a fit for these particular leadership principles. And they're quite extensive, and most companies, at least in the e-commerce space, in the IT space, they have similar things, right? So for me, it was like when I looked up questions for Amazon and these leadership principles, it helped me also with interviews in other companies. So yeah,
Yes.
that was something that maybe for somebody would be helpful. And I think there was a book, Grokking Coding Interview. You know this one?
Yes, I actually never managed to
Oh,
read
not
till
Grokking,
the end.
but like I don't remember how it's called, but like it's quite
Yes, yeah. I think like let's say
cracking,
7 years ago, there were many books
cracking the
published on this
coding
topic.
interview. Yeah. So there is a clock on the cover, cracking the coding interview. So there is a chapter on behavioral interviews, and they give you like some sort of a framework, like a table that you need to think, and you put stories there. And I think they also suggest to use the star format for answering.
Star format is actually quite contradictional. So many people say you can't really frame your tech experience in star, which I don't agree. I think like having some framework is better than nothing because it also helps you to structure your thoughts, right? I mean, especially if you answer the question you are not prepared for, which will happen quite often, right? Like knowing how you can structure your thoughts, right? So the star is situation, task, action, result, right? And you just go mentally from this map. And it's actually amazing because even if you, let's say, never told the story before, because you structured this quite well, I would say, right? So people will be able to understand this and it will be a nice answer, right? So yeah, so like having this framework helps where I'm more than just star, but star may be the most popular.
And you said that right now you focus on mentoring, right? So you don't
Yes.
do. So how did you decide to focus on mentoring? Because like I think it was probably not an easy decision to just, okay, I'm working, but now I just want to focus completely on my thing, right? It's scary. I know, because like I was in the same situation when I was working and doing DataTalks.Club, and then I thought, okay, now I just need to focus on one thing, and then you kind of take the leap of faith, right? Thinking, okay, like fingers crossed, it will work. Let's see what happens, and it's scary. Like, how did it happen
Yes.
for you?
Maybe to be absolutely fair, it's not like I imagine myself being a mentor for the rest of my life, right?
Mhm,
So it's more like right now it was the right moment, right? So and it
mhm,
was like many things coming together which kind of push me in this, and I was very happy that I could do this because let's say my last workplace did not work out.
mhm,
And having mentoring was helping me, to actually see some purpose still in my life, and also help something which can feed me, so to speak, right? So, um, however, it's quite hard job, I must say, right? So, like, I really like being mentor, and I really like help people, and I think I can do this quite good, right? So, because many people are quite happy and working with me for many months. Still, I believe it's quite hard job because on one hand, you are working a lot with very motivated and talented people, right? So as a leader, let's say as a team lead, um, I guess it's something people dream of, right? So work only with people who are very motivated, who are eager to grow, who are eager to do things you suggest them to do, right? So like every leader will tell you this is not what's usually going on in the working place, right? So here it's very ideal situation. But on the other hand, you also have this people who are constantly challenging themselves and challenging you, obviously. And you always have this, okay, I need to do more things, right? So I need to think this more, and I need to kind of prepare better for this, right? So it's like you never stop um, learning, and this is quite common in our field, but you also always stretch yourself, right? So and the stretching might be quite stressful, so you have to find a balance as a mentor where you say, okay, now I know enough, so I don't need constantly upgrade myself to be a better mentor and better person knowing something. Yeah.
How did it happen to you? Like, how did you start mentoring?
Oh, it was rather accidentally, I would say. So after I moved to the industry, um, couple of people approached me and asked if I can help them to understand how to do this because they struggled. And I was like, of course, yeah, because I remember my struggles. So I was glad to help someone and make their life easier. So it happened a couple of times, and then some people at my work, when I was working at Blue Yonder, approached me and asked me, like formally, if I can become their mentor. I was like, there is a word for this. It's nice. And when I was trying to find a mentor myself and noticed that it's not so easy. So like if you have someone who is, let's say, advanced in their career, it does not make them automatically a good mentor, right? So especially if they did not want to do this and you just approach them and they say, yes, why not? But then you see that it does not really work that well. So I think this is what forced me to think first, what is mentoring and how to do this and what where the value will be, so to speak, for other
And what
people.
is actually mentoring?
This is a good question. I think mentoring is a way how you can make life of other people easier, right? So
Because
like
it's not, so you said like if somebody is more advanced in their career, it does not make them automatically a good mentor. Because it looks like from what you described, mentorship is an ongoing thing. It's not just you meet for a cup of coffee for 20 minutes and then like that's over, right? It's more regular.
it's a process, right? No, it might be that you meet a couple of times and that's it, right? So I would not call this person a mentor, but definitely the person who helped for some
Yeah.
particular questions, right? But yes, usually it is a process, and here it makes sense for the mentor to understand which type of a process they actually or what the goal is, right? So maybe not the process, because if they knew how to do this, they won't need a mentor. But the goal we need to identify themselves.
Like finding a job, for example.
Yes, finding the job, getting the promotion, moving from academia to industry, finding a job in another country, right, and so on. And then this goal helps you to look for the right person, right? So like if you want to find a job in Germany and you never work in Germany before, you definitely need a mentor who is working in Germany or used to work in Germany, so they can tell you what are the special things you have to watch out, right? Or how it works and what are the type of the companies you can see there and so on, right? So mentoring for the mentor, it's like sharing your knowledge, but quite often your knowledge you collected might be not enough. So you also have to constantly look, like, well, for example, with what's going on in the German market, you have to kind of look around, because if you're just working in one company, it does not mean you know or understand what's going
Yeah,
on
right.
everywhere else, right? And things like this. So it's also being maybe more kind of strategic in your head, and also find the motivation and explain to yourself what is your motivation to do these things now, right? And coming from physics, I think there are two things which are most important in life. It's like time and energy, right? And I see myself as a helper to save both time and energy, right? So, or to gain some energy to do things. Because if someone tells you, if you do this, it will bring you closer to your goal. It's of course nice, because right now there is so much information around us, right? So you're bombarded every day by all these advices from random people. So you need to find some kind of lighthouse or some guidance in this. And I think mentor can help with this. Yeah.
And so there is a question, and I think you answered that. Did you decide to become a mentor first, or somebody asked you for mentorship? And you said like it wasn't a decision to become a mentor first. For you, it was somebody asked you, and then you, okay, this is how it's called. I like it. Let me start doing more of it, right?
Right. Maybe just to add here, for me, I think back when at that time, I struggled a bit with this. I'm a very curious person. I learn a lot of things in my free time. I do a lot of courses, reading a lot of books about machine learning, data science in general. I was happy to go to some events and talk with people and so on. And I just realized I have a lot of knowledge I have no use at my current working place, right? Because I was working on Blue Yonder on the demand forecasting solutions, which was very limited, I would say, use case even for data science. And I definitely could not use all the knowledge I collected about something else. So for me, mentoring was also a way to share this, or to find some people with whom I can talk about this stuff, right? So like right now I have a couple of mentors who are working on computer vision or learning more about computer vision, and it's some field where I never worked before myself. And it's more like exploring this together, right? So how it works and what you can do there. Yeah.
And so you also said that, like, I'm just trying to remember what you said, but what I want to ask is, so let's say I have a problem, right? The problem is, let's say I want to find a job or get a promotion, whatever, right? And then I find a person who has done this already, right? So somebody moved, let's say, from Russia to Germany, took part in large Hadron Collider experiments, and then I don't know, found a job in the industry, right? So find this person online, and I'm kind of already maybe on a similar path, but a few steps behind. So I want to reach out to this person and ask for help, right? How do I make it interesting to that person to actually respond? Because just to explain why, where I'm coming from this, is sometimes I get requests from super random requests on LinkedIn. Hey, be my mentor. And that's it. It's like, who are you? Like, why should I respond?
Yeah,
And
nice.
like, it's such a big ask, right?
Yes, it's a really big thing, right? So to be a
Like,
mentor
and
to
I don't know
someone.
you. Like, it's the first time I see your face in my LinkedIn. Like, no, sorry. Like, how to, like, let's say if somebody really wants to ask for help for somebody, like, how should they approach it?
This is a very good question. I mean, like there are two ways to find a mentor, right? So like there are paid mentors, so I'm paid mentor, obviously, right? There are unpaid mentors, and there are communities where you can also find for the unpaid mentor, right? So regardless, whenever or not you are ready or able to pay for this, I would suggest to look for the communities first, because where you can find people who actually decided to dedicate their time. And as I mentioned before, like this decision for the mentor to be a mentor is very important, right? So yeah, there might be people who just started to do this and they suddenly decided that this is important for them, so they wanted to be a better mentor, and I know people like this. But most of the people, if you randomly approach them on the internet, they might be happy to talk with you once just out of curiosity, but it won't be very helpful and will be waste of your time as well as a mentor, right? So like try to find this community first, and they usually have some rules what you should mention and how you describe, right? So this goal definition, this is very important, why you need this and what you think is missing, right? So and why you approach this particular mentor, right? So even if I'm paid mentor, I still select people with whom I would like to work, because I know that I can't help absolutely everyone, right? So I just can help people to whom I can relate, or to whom I know I can imagine myself how I can be helpful in this situation, right? So this description is also important even for the paid mentor. So who you are, what you want to achieve, and why you decided that this person will be a good fit for you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And again, coming back to my personal experience, when somebody says sends a very concrete message saying, "Hey, this is what I need help with. How about meeting for lunch next week?"
Mhm.
It's like super concrete, and then like, okay, I don't mind having lunch, and then like, okay, this is something I can help with. Like, why not? So then, when you make it concrete, is better as opposed to like, "Hey, be my mentor."
Yes, no, absolutely, I agree. I mean, like, if you just say, "Hey, be my mentor," usually the best thing which can happen to you, people will not respond to you, right? So,
Yeah.
that's right. So I doubt that this person got actually a good reply from anyone. Yeah, yes, being concrete, having some action, so to speak, right? So can we talk? Again, don't ask for too much time in the beginning, because people might be very busy. So like having a live conversation, of course, helps here, but don't expect too much time from their side in the very beginning, because it's also a bit, yeah, if we are successful, we most probably very busy people by now.
So there is a comment I see in YouTube that paid mentorship sounds very odd. I don't know. Like actually, mentors put time and effort to do this. So to me, it does not sound odd. What do you think? Like,
I mean, this
and
is a
why
very,
might
very,
it sound
very good question. Yeah,
odd?
as someone who invests a lot of time, who thinks about this a lot and so on, I can't imagine myself doing this for free. Although I'm doing this sometimes, right? So for some people, I actually did this for free in the past. I was
Pro
also
bono.
part of this non-paid community and so on. And I know there are some disadvantages, right? So there is a reason, because if you pay for something, you actually take this more seriously. This is what I notice, right? Because when you say, it's not like I'm not obliged, it's for me, so therefore I'm not obliged to do anything and I won't show up to our next call. So if you pay for this, it's kind of, you're like, okay, I'm investing my money into this and my time. You also become more serious as a mentor. This is why I usually suggest people who would like to become a mentor actually consider this option, because it will improve, let's say, quality of the people with whom they are working, so to speak. Yes, and it's like, on one hand, I invest my time. On another hand, I spend a lot of time in the past to gain this experience, right? And I do share this for free, so to speak, right? So I post a lot on the LinkedIn and so on. But I do see the value and a lot of energy it requires from me, to be more personalized, right? To talk with someone and help in their particular situation. And I think it's absolutely worth it, right? So, but yeah, if it's not for you, it's also fine. And as I said, there are many people who also share this opinion that mentorship must be for free for whatever reason, and they're happy to provide this. Some people I know, like in Germany, they're actually scared to do this as a paid mentor because of all this tax things and so on. So yeah, they will do this just for free, because just to avoid this additional bureaucracy stuff.
Yeah, and also I think you also mentioned that when you were at Blue Yonder, people asked you to be their mentor formally. And it's also something I did at my previous company at OLX. And this was a very interesting experience. Like work-wise, you get more work, but it's kind of unpaid in the sense that you don't get more salary, but then you kind of still work. So that was pretty interesting. So maybe another thing for people to think about is like, for example, when it comes to getting a promotion or switching like from analyst to data scientist, for example, within the company,
Absolutely.
getting somebody within the company. And there could be already frameworks from the HR department for doing that.
Right. I mean, in the company, you actually get some additional benefits, right? So if you're a mentor, as you said, like, it might be good for your promotion.
Yeah.
It's also good for expanding your network, right? So because you usually work with people who maybe not someone directly from your team. And also maybe with someone who might move to some other department sometime if you're working in the big company. So it's a nice way to establish relationship. And I think this is how initially the mentorship appeared, right? So it was more like people within one company were trying to find like people who can guide them, right? And I believe it's still worth it, even if you're not paid by your company for this. But if you look for someone outside, you need to understand, and I would definitely ask why they decided to become a mentor, right? So because if you don't understand their motivation, it might be not clear for you how far they can help you.
Yeah, right. And I remember I did use actually like this my mentorship experience, mentoring experience for my promotion case, saying, "Hey, like I
Did it
got so
work?
many people." Yeah, I did.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I did not do this back then, but at some point, and we didn't have time to talk about this, but I realized that like in Blue Yonder, I will not have, let's say, I can't go as far as I wanted or as quick as I wanted to go very far, meaning like move into the official leadership positions. And I was trying to explore the kind of the world outside, and this is why I actually left Blue Yonder eventually, to explore these leadership positions. And I think like having this mentor experience helped me a lot, because otherwise, I mean, I had this informal kind of experience, right? So I was leading the team, I was kind of leading the project and so on, but I never had like official title, like a manager or something, right? So I was an individual contributor. And talking about this mentorship experience actually helped me back then, because it's part, I mean, it's not like 100% of what you do as the manager of a team, but some things are very relevant, right? So when people want to develop, and I think in data science and machine learning, many people want to develop themselves. So if you come with this, yeah, I know how to develop people, I know how to talk with them about this, this is a big plus for many companies who will consider to hire you without a formal leadership experience.
So last question, and then we call it a day. So which communities would you recommend where people can find like unpaid mentors or volunteers in data science?
This is a good, to be honest, right now, since I'm not like part of this communities or not active member, I don't remember the names, but I guess
There
if
was
you
one
Google
in
like,
Germany, right? I remember like during COVID times, one like I saw it all over the place in social media.
maybe we can link something.
Mentoring Club,
To
maybe. I think it was Mentoring
Yes, like
Club.
I was just thinking
The
mentoring
Mentoring
club
Club.
is paid or unpaid, maybe not. Yeah, so mentoring club sounds familiar. I
It's
know
probably
mentor
paid.
pros, but it is paid. So you can find a lot of
Anyways, yeah, Google is your friend, I think. Well, we should rename this podcast, this interview, because we like there was
right.
LLM. We did not talk about LLMs, but like we did talk a lot about other things. I don't know how LLMs appear there, but like not important. We will probably rename it to Large Hadron Collider and Mentorship. And I want to thank you for sharing your expertise with us. So now I know what Large Hadron Collider did. Well, more than before. Uh,
Yeah,
so luckily, we are all still alive and not like the universe did not collapse because of the
looks
experiments.
like this. Yeah.
Yeah, or you never know, maybe it did. It's just the Matrix. Anyways, so thanks a lot for doing that. And yeah, well, it was a pleasure talking with you.
Yeah, it was a pleasure for me as well. Thank you, Alexei, for interesting questions and discussion. I mean, I was definitely not prepared to talk a lot about my research career, but I'm glad we talked about this and
Yeah.
maybe people learned a bit more. I guess
Mm-hmm.
LLM is something everyone is talking about these
Mm-hmm.
days, so maybe LHC deserved
Yeah.
more attention.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you
Mm-hmm.
for inviting me. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
and I wish you and all listeners and watchers of our live discussion today a great day.
Yeah. So thanks everyone for joining in and asking questions. And yeah, next week we have a break, but then we will have more interviews. So yeah, stay tuned. And yeah, bye.
Bye.
Bye everyone.